As I mentioned earlier, we're so fortunate at Autism New Jersey to have a legislative champion in both the State Senate and the General Assembly. That champion in the Assembly is the Honorable Lou Greenwald. Inspired to enter public service by his mother, Maria Greenwald, who was elected the first female mayor of Cherry Hill when the Assemblyman was just 9 years old, he has often said that he has learned so much from her approach to governing. But there is no question that his unmatched constituent service and his tireless advocacy for those less fortunate are chief among those lessons. His record of accomplishments is too long to list here, but here's a sample. He has literally helped to transform cancer care throughout South Jersey. He's highlighted the need for comprehensive election reform, helped repair the broken auto insurance system in the state, and helped to create the Amber Alert to protect our children. His work on behalf of those with developmental disabilities and autism has marked his career. He has followed in the footsteps of Speaker Joe Roberts to ensure that the families we serve always have a skilled and compassionate voice fighting for them in the General Assembly and beyond. It is my honor to present to you the Honorable Lou Greenwald.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. What a wonderful group of people. What a great crowd. I'm so thrilled that you're all here, but I think it really speaks to the importance of this issue, and I'm always flattered by the introduction, especially when people reference my mother. And you know, I had the tremendous privilege at the age of 9 years old to watch this remarkable woman have the courage to answer an ad in the newspaper to run for public office. And she was literally, she was a Pop Warner mom before there were soccer moms. She was a den mother for our Cub Scouts when I was a Weeblo. She was a PTA member and active in our church. She was just one of you. She was a neighbor. She was someone who cared deeply, but she cared mostly about her family. And it was tough times for us. And a lot of the same stories you hear today, they were a young family. My mother and father had gotten married, and my brother and I were their only children, and they were trying to raise their children in New Jersey, which even then was a high-cost state with high property taxes. And she was struggling to make ends meet, and she needed to go back to work. She desperately wanted to be a teacher, but she could not afford to go to college when she graduated from the top of her class at a Notre Dame high school for girls, and there were no county colleges in a state like New Jersey at the time. So she ended up going to work for a company called American Acceptance Corporation, where she trained young men to grow and become executives and climb the corporate ladder, a ladder that she would never be allowed to actually step upon herself. One of the young men that came through that office was my father. They fell in love and they got married. I'm the byproduct of that, so thank God. She, my second mother, Loretta Weinberg, is typing in from the gallery. The truth of the matter, though, is that they were families like yours. And there was a moment in our family where I think my mother had finally just drawn a line, where my brother and I were learning to swim at Columbia Lakes in Cherry Hill. It was a cedar pond, and the admission fee for the summer was $3. And they had the audacity, the head of recreation had the audacity to increase it to $5. That meant we couldn't go. And my mother was teaching nursery school in the basement of a Presbyterian church to help other young families who were dual-income households trying to go to work. And they couldn't, my mother couldn't get that teaching degree to teach in a classroom. When they raised that fee, my mother became a gadfly. She became somewhat of notoriety in the community, and she fought back that fee increase. And her friends said, you know what, when this ad came in the newspaper, you should run for office. You should be a part of this process. And she did. She answered the ad in the newspaper. She came to a group of people like yourself. She made a speech. They asked her to run, and she became the first woman ever elected mayor of Cherry Hill. She went on. See a lot of women in the audience. Play to my crowd. A lot of women in the audience. So she then went on to become the first woman ever to run county government in Camden County, the first woman Freeholder director, and she became the first woman ever elected surrogate in the state of New Jersey. She served in public life for over 20 years. She passed away tragically in a car accident a tenth of a mile from the home that my father and her built when they were pregnant with me. She was on the way to a funeral for a wonderful public servant, a gentleman by the name of Walter Rand, a senator from Camden County. The headline in the newspaper the next day, the reason why I share this story with you is because the headline in the newspaper the next day was not first woman mayor dies tragically or first woman field or director loses her life in a car accident. The headline in the newspaper the day after she passed was the community has lost its mother. That is the greatest title that we were raised to believe that you could have. Husband and wife, mom and dad, friend. This audience today is made up of those titles, of the many others that you hold. First and foremost, your mothers and fathers, your husbands and wives, your brothers and sisters, and your friends. This cause, this fight for autism, has been, over my career, its greatest champion, as much as we appreciate the accolades, has not been people like Joe Roberts and myself or Loretta. The greatest champions have been mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, and friends. So I'm here for you. Thank you. I'm here to talk to you today for a couple of reasons. One is because my mother's legacy stood for if a poor child from the city of Camden, of which she was, where she was raised in an immigrant household by her grandparents because her father died when she was 3, as they did. When she couldn't speak the English language when she went to school and the teachers came home and said she had to be Americanized. When she graduated at the top of her class but couldn't afford to go to college. When a woman like Maria Greenwald could answer an ad in the newspaper to run for public life, to make a difference in the lives of others, she stood for the belief that anyone can do that. And in this room is a talent-laden group of people that we need in public service. We need your intelligence, we need your passion, we need your commitment. And the difference that you make in a group like this with autism is one component of where we can add it. So I share that message with you because nothing would make her more proud than if her son could deliver a message to all of you. Why not you? Why not you join these ranks and step in and help? Help us fight for your cause. On this issue of autism that I am so passionate about, I was raised to believe that we govern from life experiences. And when my wife and I got married, we had 2 wonderful friends who were in our wedding party, and we had children about the same time. And our daughter Lauren and their son Ethan was born. And after a few months, we started to realize, and they started to realize, that Ethan had autism. And while I had heard about autism, and it was before the child's picture appeared on the front of a magazine, I began to really start to understand autism for the first time as we saw our friends go through this. And the struggle of, let's try a diet, let's talk to a doctor, let's see if it's this, let's see if it's that. And these were people that had such love for their child, as you all do. And I began to watch this network grow of people that were working with each other to try to figure out what worked for your child may work for mine. And one of the things that is the byproduct of that conversation and that dialogue for us and that life experience was to help create this helpline for families, families helping families. That helpline was in jeopardy in this last budget cycle, and people like myself and Loretta said, this is the closest thing to experts on the ground that we have to help people understand what may be available to them, what doctors they could go see, what research is available, what is working and what is not working. And the one thing that we know, what works for one child may not work for another, but we do know that a parent who has lived through this, talking to another parent who is about to go through it, is really the greatest gift that we can give to someone else. This helpline is critically important. So Loretta and I and a bunch of our friends fought together to make sure that the money was in for this budget, to make sure that this helpline lives, that it is a line that continues not just for today, but for years to come, because this really is more than just a helpline for some families, but a lifeline for families that are hearing this diagnosis for the first time and wondering what tomorrow holds for them. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be a part of this movement. We have worked on so much legislation over the years, whether it's tied to early diagnosis with pediatricians, funding to make sure that families weren't going bankrupt on unreimbursed insurance costs. We know there's more work to do, but we know in many respects it begins at a very simple level with people on the ground. There's an old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. For some of our children, that first step is a little harder than others. We are here, and government's role is to make sure that that child, unbeknownst to them, is being lifted up and helped by government and all of you to take that first step and begin to run to their future and the best future that they can have. Thank you for being a part of this. God bless you. Thank you for having us here today. We are so proud of you and what you've been able to do.